Step right into our weekly video collection where we delve into a diverse range of subjects revolving around relationships, family dynamics, and personal development. Whether you're contemplating the idea of marriage or simply intrigued by experiments, this captivating video is tailored to meet your interests. So settle in and unwind. Don't forget to leave the timestamp of your favorite stories so others can watch it too. Remember to show your support by smashing that like button and subscribing to our channel. Gentlemen, what is an absolute red flag a woman can raise on the first date, viewer edition? Story 1. One of the girls I dated very briefly in high school kept telling me these stories of her abusive ex-boyfriend who lived in another state. She would go on and on about how he was stalking her, threatening her. She would tell me to get her out of places we went because she saw him sneaking around the corner, etc., etc. Turned out that the abusive ex-boyfriend never existed. She made the whole thing up, and after me and her broke up, she started telling everyone the exact same abuse story, only this time, instead of saying it was her ex, she would say that it was me. About 10 years later, I was watching the local news and saw her face on the TV screen. The police had arrested her for beating a 2-year-old baby to death who she was babysitting. Be careful out there, guys. I mean, I don't necessarily think that someone talking about an abusive ex who's stalking them is necessarily a red flag, but clearly in this situation it was. I mean, also it is, a good idea to remember that, a red flag is just a warning and not like this clear-cut the end, but if things like this come up, take note of it, keep it in mind. It could be important. Also, that is really awful to hear what she did. Story 2. Had my first prolonged conversation with a female coworker who just started. Within minutes, I knew her entire former history with abuse and how it was her brother and later her boyfriend responsible. Glad she felt comfortable enough to share, but damn, can't just spring that on someone. I mean, that's a lot to spring on. That's not even a date. It's just your first long conversation with a new coworker. It might be a little bit much, and it indicates to me that maybe she is just really desperate for someone to talk to, maybe needs to talk to a therapist or someone like that. I don't know. Too little information, but I do feel bad for her. Story 3. Met a stranger who replied to one of my icebreaker messages on Plenty of Fish. Met for coffee, and over the course of a 20-minute conversation, I learned she was unemployed, living in an addiction center, mentally ill, spends money on fortune tellers so she can communicate with her sister who committed self-termination, believed she was phantom pregnant as some sort of religious experience, was almost proud of the fact that she was hospitalized for overdosing recently, and more. Story 4. Biggest red flag, when they expect you to take care of them despite being more well off than you. It's like, ma'am, I am 18, broke, unemployed, in college, and I have enough issues and traumas on my own that I'm still working through. I'm not going to babysit a 23-year-old with a rich daddy just because you won't use a microwave. Bonus points if they shame you for being weak since you've been single up until that point when really you're just in the most vulnerable place in your life. Yeah, folks, I gotta say, I think some of your best relationships are gonna be the ones where you're partners, in it together, each contributing. I mean, everyone's gonna find their own grooves and ways that they contribute and whatnot, but, it's supposed to be kind of a 50-50 thing. Story 5. If a guy tells her he dumped his girlfriend for her and she's still all for it, that just screams trashy. Yes, that happened to me. He begged me for a second chance and then less than a week later told me he felt a spark after talking with a coworker for the first time. Red flags all around. They're still together and describe their relationship as complicated. Story 6. Concerning number 33, first dates are also first impressions. When your first impression is somebody being incredibly fake or trying to sell you on some idea of how they are, then it's a huge red flag. When people try to sell you on the idea they are something and not something else, it's a lie. Oh, I'm not like other guys, or I'm not like other girls is exactly what people who are just like them say. Hell, even teenage me used to say I wasn't like other guys, and the worst part was I believed my own BS. I genuinely was different in some areas of interest and hobbies, but at my core, I was a horny teen wanting to play like everyone else. So no, judge away. Go with your gut. Your gut tells you it's a bad idea, go with it. Okay, I didn't go back and rewatch the video that these comments are from, but I believe, recall saying, hey, don't necessarily judge people right away. Give them a chance. Sometimes people are nervous. And I think, this person, makes some points where you should take note of stuff. If things seem off, if your gut is giving you like, I've got a little bit of a bad feeling, keep it in mind. But I'm going to stick by my response saying that I think people are nuanced and nervous and screw up. And someone saying, I'm not like other girls, like, take note of it. It's not necessarily a great thing. But it could also be the thing where 20 years later, you're talking like, oh yeah, we were on our first date. And what did you say, hun? And she's like, oh my God, I said I'm not like other girls. Why did I even say that? I was so nervous. Like, people, never mind. I'm going to get too worked up. Just, people are nuanced. Take note of things, but you don't always have to like hear one tiny thing and be like, over. Story 7. When your friend continues to hit on you and tell you they love you even after you've made it clear you're uncomfortable with this and their girlfriend has said the same. I'm sorry, Alex, but that's not being poly, that's just cheating. Story 8. Memories. I went on a first date with a woman who told me how she wanted to be independent and especially on a first date will insist on separate checks at the restaurant. We went to a restaurant and the waiter asked how we wanted to pay. I told her to split the bill. The next day, I was insulted via email that I did not pay the entire bill. Okay, lesson learned, and that was my last date. Story 9. As we sat down at the restaurant on our first date, she started talking about how many kids we should have. She was 100% serious. This was a blind date set up by a mutual friend. I've never seen either of them since. Story 10. Once went out with a girl that went on a long rant about gay marriage. I just told her, I fully support everyone's right to do whatever they want. I don't think we're going to work out. Commenter, I like you, and I appreciate you. As someone who's part of the LGBTQ community, your support is awesome. Story 11. When she had an entire conversation about how she's uncertain whether she's in love with her best friend. Like, wow, yeah. I'm feeling really good about how you'll probably leave me on a whim because of that guy. Story 12. I've got one. Trauma venting from the start. I had a guy I was dating who from the first couple dates used to either compare me to his exes or talk about the bad experiences in his past relationships. Like, yeah, talking about prior relationships is good, but not if that's all you can talk about, and especially not during the first dates. Story 13. If a woman tells you she wants unprotected intercourse and it's okay because she can't get pregnant for some reason or other, run away. It's amazing how stupid and gullible some guys can be when they get thirsty enough. Edit, it's not a problem I've had personally, but I've seen it happen to other guys. I never gave one of them an I told you so, as that's just salt on the wound, but a bad outcome was always predictable. Story 14. I want someone who will treat me like a queen. Men have feelings too, we just don't always show common ones. Story 15. Her. I always wanted to be married and pregnant by 30. She was 29. The date was in May. Her birthday is in August. Me. Excuse me, I just remembered I left the dog on and I need to walk the oven. Story 16. Wound up on a blind date as a favor to a colleague, can't call her a friend after this, who asked me to take her friend out and show her around. The friend had just moved to the area and didn't know anyone or what was around to do. Went to meet the mystery woman at her place, and when she answered the door, she looked me up and down with the expression someone has when they realize they've stepped in something nasty. Before I can even introduce myself, she speaks to me in an angry, growly tone. Let's get things straight up front. First, I'm doing you a favor by going on this date, so you're paying for everything. No complaints, no bullcrap. Second, I don't need some guy making choices for me. I will be the one who decides where we go and what we do. If you've got a problem with that, get over it. Third, I don't care how much you spend. Don't even think you're getting intercourse or anything else out of me. You so much as touch me, I'll mace you and have you arrested for assaulting me. You got all that? I waited a moment and then said, first, I'm doing this as a favor for name withheld. You weren't doing me any favors even before you opened your mouth. Second, I expected to be paying tonight just to be nice. Third, I don't mind you having your own opinion, but you don't run me. Fourth, I was willing to let your attitude go up until you decided I was some pervert who couldn't keep my hands to myself. Have a good night. I then turned around and walked away, pulling out my phone and calling my colleague and letting her know what happened. An hour later, she called me back to tell me her friend had called her and gave her a story about how I treated her like dirt and demanded intercourse from her before we even went anywhere. My colleague knew me better and called her on her BS before she could go any further. Needless to say, I never did another favor for my colleague.
Look, I understand that it is definitely tough out there, especially for women in the dating scene, where guys can be pushy. Maybe this person has been through some crap in the past, and yeah, have your guard up and, protect yourselves out there. She doesn't know what kind of person she's going on a date with. Maybe she's, scared, whatever. But I think this might be a slight overcorrection. That's a little bit intense for like a little blind date. Like, have some faith that your friend who set you up on this blind date wouldn't set you up with a complete monster. This is not going to start things off at a good tempo.
What's your greatest, most satisfying I effing called it moment? Viewer edition.
Story 1. The husband guessing the wife's pregnancy is so true. My parents have me and my sister, and both pregnancies my dad said the "you must be pregnant" thing. We were drinking with some friends one day, and my mom mentions that every time she was scared of being pregnant again, Dad would go, "No, you're not. You'll see. It'll come down on the 30th. And our two friends said their husbands do the same thing, and they're always right. The type of connection I want in my marriage. I'm happy I got close with my mother and her friends. They're teaching me a lot about healthy relationships and adulthood in general, while still being the baby of the group. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes people have a sixth sense about those kind of things. They can just feel it. Or they're just really lucky with their guesses. I mean, statistically, someone's got to be. Not me. Story 2. I heard a single beat of music fly by on the wind from across downtown Indianapolis one day. I said, that's Papa Roach playing. My dad was baffled and immediately began looking up who was playing because we knew there was a big concert happening because we could see the spotlights in the sky over the venue from across the town. I was right, and he still tells people the story.
Story 3. I had a moment like this. I was crossing the Canadian border with my mom, and when the person in front of us was going through customs, I turned to my mom and said, "The girl in front of us is going to get arrested. Just watch." And she said that there was no way that would happen. Skip to a few minutes later, and they have the lady step out of the car, and they put her in handcuffs. I just turned to my mom, and she was shocked. I worked entrance gate security at my college campus for 2 years, so that might be how I knew something was off.
I mean, if your mom knew that you did gate security, you'd think she would trust you more. I'm going to trust someone on their instincts if they did that kind of work. I mean, if you tell me that someone's, going to start trouble in a line, I believe you, gate security person. I believe you.
Story 4. My favorite called it moment is kind of sad. When I was around 7, I had a best friend, M. One day I left my house to head to my grandparents' and I saw her street closed. There were firefighters and smoke and it was terrifying. I had a gut feeling it was M's house and told my mom. My mom said it wasn't and doubted me. Come to find out, it was M's. Sigh. No one listens. Story 5. I got really obsessed with COVID stats back in December 2019. I remember talking about it with some people at school right before spring break. I commented that we were about 2 to 3 weeks behind the numbers currently being reported in Italy and that I'd be shocked if the school was still open more than a week after we got back from spring break. Everyone thought I was just being dramatic at the time. Unfortunately, I never got to say I told you so since the school was closed for COVID after break. Laugh my butt off. Story 6. One time we were doing this thing in drama class and we were in small groups. We were doing this charades type thing. I was with these 3 other guys and it was one of the guys' turns to go up. I was looking at the board to see what I could choose for my next turn. I saw loyalty and thought it would be a good idea to be a dog for that one. The guy started acting and I thought it would be funny to guess loyalty even though he had only started like 1 second ago and there was no evidence that said he was doing loyalty. I just thought it would be funny. So I guessed loyalty. He said in a somewhat angry voice, but then he paused. Wait, yeah, it was. How did you guess that? I still find it hilarious how I guessed it after a second. Story 7. After watching Star Wars The Force Awakens, Episode 7, I immediately told my family I believe the Rey was a Palpatine due to a stabby move she did that greatly resembles Palp's move after the spinning jump thing in ROTS. Sure enough, Episode 9 reveals that Rey is his granddaughter.
Okay, you called it and you were right, but we should also admit that they didn't have a story planned and they weren't going to do that. Like, I don't think that was planned until they did the third, ninth movie. And also the ninth movie was bad. It was really bad. And the eighth one had problems, but I kind of liked it. But I also don't like Star Wars much. Why am I weighing in on this?
Story 8. My most recent moment was watching the show Wednesday. My sister-in-law always boasts about her sleuthing ability and had finished watching the show before me. She asked me who I thought the two culprits were. I called both while still having to watch 4 episodes. She believed it was the one lady right up until the point she got murdered by the creature. Story 9. I have a similar story to number 6. My brother really liked a certain television crime procedural. It followed a team of agents, typically investigating murders related to military members. Not having watched the show, I come in and notice some angsty interplay between a male and female member of the team. I simply say, "Oh, so they like each other." My brother denies heartily. By the end of the episode, the male agent has left a bouquet of flowers on her desk. I just don't get how modern depictions of courtship have now become people bickering because they can't be honest about their feelings.
Folks, there are so many things that you can figure out about shows that are running that don't have a set end to the story in mind. Like, they're like, we want to keep this series going for as long as possible. Well, then they're always going to need like drama and tension and stuff. And so some of this stuff you can see coming. But even knowing that, pretty impressive that you picked up on that stuff in this show that you don't even really watch. So well done.
Story 10. One day about a year ago, my dad was planning on putting some pork chops in the fryer. My mom and I were really excited because my dad's pork chops are amazing. My dad had made a flour mixture with some seasoning and put it into a large container in the fridge while he thawed the meat. I opened the fridge to grab some water shortly after, and the container slid out, but I managed to catch it. I asked my dad to come and help me fix it since he's always so particular about where things should go. He said, "Just slide it back where it was. It's fine." I slid it back, sat down, watched some YouTube on my phone. Not even 5 minutes later, my dad opened the fridge and the container slid and hit him in the chest, covering him in flour and knocking him down. "I told you so," I said. We had McDonald's for dinner. Story 11. A good friend and I were obsessively watching How I Met Your Mother for years, collected clues from previous episodes, and always made up theories of what's going to happen next. Once it was announced that the last season was coming, I called the entire ending except for Barney having a kid. My friend thought I was crazy to assume such an ending, and I just thought, but it's the only coherent way to end it now. It surely was. Felt super proud. Obviously, I liked the ending because I nailed it. Story 12. My grandmother and I were watching The Night Shift. At the beginning of one episode, we hear a loud thud. Pan to the bloody body of an unconscious girl a few feet away from a 3-story school building. I silently said to myself, "Oof, self-termination attempt." My grandmother leaned in and told me, no, she fell. Fast forward a few minutes later, her best friend was walking with the girl on a stretcher saying, "I'm sorry I wasn't there when you fell." The girl on the stretcher said with tears in her eyes, "I didn't fall, I jumped." Called it. Story 13. I was in the theater with my older brother watching a horror movie, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, I think. There was a scene outside a courtroom in some sort of street or back alley with 2 characters talking about the progression of the trial or something. I leaned over to my brother, pointed to one of the 2 characters, and said, "That man is gonna die." Completely out of nowhere. The 2 characters finished their conversation, and the man I had pointed out was still alive. My brother turns to me to say that I was wrong. As he does so, the same character gets hit and killed by a car. My brother's expression was priceless.
Honestly, one of the things that I will say can make a good horror movie for me is if I can't predict who's going to die. Because I will tell you, it becomes really easy to predict in a lot of modern horror stories who's going to die and who did it. Because there's so many little tropes and hints that the movie has to sprinkle along the way. So that way, if you watch it a second time, you can be like, I see it. But I'm nitpicky about movies, and I notice a lot of these things, and so, yeah, I get where you're coming from with this. Have not seen The Exorcism of Emily Rose, so good call on that one.
What embarrassing moment did you not stop someone from doing because you wanted to see what happened instead?
Story 1! This one is reversed, as it was my friend laughing maniacally while it happened to me. My college roommate used to work at this chicken restaurant called Chicken Express. We would go eat at the location close to campus. This was not the location that he actually worked at. Pretty often, because it's delicious. So one time he tells me, "Hey man, when you order the tenders, make sure you say shibby shibby after you order. That's the code to tell them you work at Chicken E, and they'll hook you up with like 20 tenders." Maybe it was wishful thinking or just plain stupidity, but I totally believed him. We drove through the drive-thru and he was in the back seat. The conversation with the employee went like this. I'll have 2 number 1s with mashed potatoes, shibby shibby. Okay, 2 number 1s with mashed potatoes, and what was that last thing? Shibby shibby? Having trouble hearing you. A what now? Shibby shibby. Sir, I have no idea what you're trying to say. Do you want to pull around? At which point I look back and see my friend almost turning blue from trying to hold his laughter in. He totally lost it, and I just drove off. I mean, that's a good prank. I like that a lot. I would totally do something like that. It's harmless and it's fun. And I also think that should be the key phrase to get free stuff at drive-thrus. I think I should be able to go to any drive-thru, and if I say shibby shibby, I should get something. I don't know, maybe just a free ketchup packet, but come on, shibby shibby. Story 2. I was at a convention with a friend and went to the bathroom at break time. He heads into a stall and I go to the urinal. Man walks in right behind me and heads into the other stall, unseen by my friend. Now this man had some problems. Serious noises and smell coming from his stall. And then I hear my friend say, "Dude, what the F? You trying to win a contest?" And he proceeds to let a huge one rip and giggle. Man in other stall does not reply and unfortunately still has his own issues. My friend says, "That all you got? Check this one out, B." I'm crying from holding in the laughter at this point as he lets another loud crap fly. My friend thinks I'm in the other stall and we're alone in there. The other guy probably thinks he's in there with an absolute psycho. Then finally, my friend, after getting no response from me, says, "Yeah, boy, my crap's so powerful it got you speechless." And he laughs. Other guy is probably terrified. At this point, I start washing my hands so my friend can simultaneously hear the faucet running and crapping still going on in the stall next to him. I say, "Hey, Joe, just gonna wash up and head back to the meeting room, meet you there." It was absolutely hilarious how quiet that bathroom got when the realization sunk in for him. By the time they were both done, nobody wanted to come out first. My friend joined me in the meeting room, red-faced with a look that said, "Seriously, dude, could you not have spoken up sooner?" The only thing that could have made that story better is if after, like, the third taunting when he was just like, "Oh yeah, it's too powerful, it's got you speechless," if the guy in the other stall just suddenly started going, "Kamehameha!"
Story 3. It happened in high school while watching an educational movie. We were 2 classes tucked into a small classroom to watch it together, so people had to sit on the desk as there wasn't enough chairs. I sat next to my friend's girlfriend on a desk with my friend on a chair in front of us. She stroked her hand through his hair, he takes his hand behind his back and proceeds to stroke her leg. Only thing was, it was my leg. I poked his girlfriend to let her know what was going on. We both knew what had to be done without uttering the words. We let this go on for a good 5 minutes, constantly fighting the urge to laugh out loud. Then I slowly pulled my trouser leg up. He stroked my very furry leg for about half a second before he realized something was very wrong. I'll never forget his face when he turned around to see what was going on. Story 4. I went out to eat hibachi with my family. I think I was 10 or 11 at the time. In addition to giving us sauce trays to dip our food into, they also gave us shaved ginger and a dollop of wasabi. My grandpa grew up during the Great Depression, so he developed a habit of always cleaning his plate. So as he finished his meal, he moved his attention to the side dish. No one else seemed to notice my grandpa staring quizzically at this rather large green lump. Not wanting to waste food, he picked the entire thing up to eat it. I could have clearly stopped him as I had been watching him the entire time, but I also wanted to see what would happen. Well, he about jumped out of his seat, spitting the wasabi onto the table and started cursing up a storm. I know it was wrong to do, but I still get a little kick out of that memory. Story 5. Last summer, we went camping, and when I tried to use one of the campground coin-operated showers, I was disappointed when I put in $1 and it didn't work. As I waited for the one that did work, the guy came up behind me and said, "Hey, it looks like that shower room is vacant. Are you waiting for this one in particular?" I explained that I had tried, but that it was out of order, so there was now 2 of us waiting for one shower room. Just minutes later, a woman and 3 kids comes by, looks at us waiting in line, and makes a dash for the vacant shower room. One of the kids looked at us and quietly asks if there's a line, and she responds, "Shh!" And the 4 of them go in and switch the door to occupied. Maybe I'm the one who should be embarrassed by not telling her, undressing yourself and 3 kids, inserting quarters that you'll never get back, only to have to redress everyone and sheepishly get in line you should have been in to begin with, is probably a bit of an overkill for the crime of seeing an opportunity and taking it. Anyway, she was there in an even longer line when I got out and glared at me as I went back to my family's camping spot. It definitely made me feel less bad about allowing her to go on a karmic adventure.
Look, the lady had it coming. She was trying to, sneak one by you, and the moment that her kid was just like, "I think there's a line," and she's like, "Shh," and tried to get him in, it's like, lady, come on. You did it. You brought this upon yourself. Don't do that. Don't teach your kids to do that. Now you're further back in line. Bwomp, bwomp.
Story 6. My coworker was known to have a temper in the office, and HR had talked to him a number of times about it. Unfortunately, he had a bad day. I normally try to calm him down because he's an alright dude with a wife and a young daughter, but he's just a little too tightly wound. Higher-ups knew I was friends with him, and it started to reflect bad on me, guilt by association. So he gets a bad call. We were in a claims department. One of his claimants started yelling at him. He starts with "mother effing this and that," and I'm like, nope, I can't be seen with him during this tantrum. He ends up getting so worked up that he picks up the office fax machine and throws it, nearly hitting a nice older lady. He walked out like 17 seconds later.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's probably a good call that you stopped associating with this person who... That's going from just, having a bit of a short fuse and a temper to being a dangerous human who probably needs to, take some anger management classes.
Story 7. While waiting for a briefing, a room full of Air Force airmen intentionally sat in every chair other than a damaged one they knew would dip very far back when someone sat in it. I arrived and the room was full. The anticipation was palpable. I already knew about the chair. I thought everyone did. So I sat in the only other one available and realized the last person absent at that point was a generally disliked senior NCO, a higher-up sergeant for those of you who don't know. As a junior NCO, I should have taken the initiative to inform said SNCO about the chair when he arrived, and for a second I was going to tell him. Then I didn't. All the airmen erupted in laughter when it happened, and it took every ounce of fortitude for me not to as well. I was definitely LOL on the inside, though. I'm not proud. Story 8. Many years ago, was hanging out with a bunch of friends from college, which we had all graduated from about 5 years before story takes place. We're having dinner. It was 4 married couples and 1 single dude. We all, including both members of all the couples, went to college together. The single guy starts talking about how he ran into this girl, Jennifer, who we all also went to college with, and with whom he had a brief fling with in college. I know that every single man at the table except me slept with Jennifer when we were in college. I also know, or at least very strongly suspect, that A, the other guys are not aware of each other having slept with her, and B, none of the women are aware that all of their husbands have slept with her. So not only do I not stop the single guy from talking about his recent encounter with her, I ask him a lot of questions. How is she? What's she doing? Does she have a boyfriend? Man, was she hot in college? Friend B, don't you think she was hot in college? Friend C, didn't you have a few classes with her? And on and on. for about 10 minutes, or just long enough for every other dude at the table to turn beet red. Meanwhile, single guy has no idea what's going on and is getting more and more confused about why I'm asking him questions about his old girlfriend. Story 9. This past weekend, I was in the car going back home after a weekend trip to Boston with my roommate. He's a really amazing dude, but he's not that great of a driver. He gets lost all the time, he drives slow, and he's just kind of oblivious, yet for various reasons, he was the driver for this trip. He got really mad at me for trying to assume full responsibility of navigation. I said fine and shut up. Sure enough, about 15 minutes later, he zoned down and we missed the exit to get off the Mass Turnpike and immediately ended up in like an extra half hour of traffic trying to turn around. I saw him zone out, I saw him make no effort to get in the right lane, and as soon as we missed it, I calmly pointed it out. He was very embarrassed and mad at himself.
I don't get why some people can't just admit that they're bad when it comes to driving in directions. I've lived in this area of Minneapolis, St. Paul for years, and every day that I go driving, I'm using Google Maps and stuff to get where I'm going because I'm like this person where I will just miss exits that I've gone on 100 times or just zone out completely. And if other people are like, do you want me to do navigation or stuff? I'm immediately like, please, yes.
What's your "I tried to do a nice thing, but it ended in disaster" story?
Story 1. I booked a hotel room for me and my husband as a surprise a couple of years back. It was fairly nice, not super high-end or anything, but over £100 for the night. Mid-range for a small town like mine, I suppose. Unfortunately, a day before we were due to stay there, I had a pretty spectacular panic attack and spent the whole weekend in bed feeling sorry for myself. Not my lovely big cloud-soft hotel bed, but my own squeaky-butt IKEA piece of crap bed. As the hotel was paid for on a non-refundable basis, I thought I'd go on Facebook and ask my friends if anyone wanted a free weekend away. A girl I knew a little sent me a message saying she would love the room if it was still free. She'd not long ago had a baby, she was struggling a little, and she could use an evening away. So I gave her all the details, check-in times, my phone number in case she needed it to give it to them, and all the other necessary paperwork, including the fact that it was a non-smoking room. I called the hotel and asked them to change the name the booking was in, which they did, but they couldn't change anything else. Didn't think it would be an issue at all. Anyway, she went, she stayed, she had a lovely, relaxing weekend, and on the Sunday night after she checked out, I got a very angry call from the hotel manager. Apparently, the room was trashed. Food everywhere, in the carpets, on the bed, even on the curtains. There was evidence of smoking and drug paraphernalia in the bathroom. I explained what had happened, but as the booking was all done by me with my bank card, I was liable. They charged me another £100 for the room because they had to clean it instead of letting it, plus extra for the cleanup. I got stiffed nearly £300 for a hotel room I never even got to stay in. I messaged the girl to at least get some of the cash back, but she blocked me on all platforms. It was a lot of money for me, and it meant I didn't feed my family very well for the next month or so, but hey, lesson learned. I'll let the room go empty next time. Better to lose £100 than £300. Oh, that is just kind of gross on that person's part. I mean, gross in the kind of literal way as like having food and the carpet and all that stuff is gross. But also, just to be like that, I know you kind of said that you indicated you didn't know her super well or whatnot. And so, what a rude thing to do. And then to, block you after all that stuff? I'm sorry. Story 2. Not my story. A friend's mom lives in the Sierra Nevada mountains. One of her husband's favorite foods is Cornish game hens. So he goes away on a trip and she decides she'll surprise him and buy some. Now, I guess at a certain point, they're no longer good to eat. So just before that point, she went to kill them and prepare them. So she went to kill one by decapitating it and couldn't bring herself to do it. At some point, she mustered up the will to go ahead with it, lopped one's head off, and it literally ran around spraying blood everywhere. She was beside herself. Fast forward, her husband comes home and she comes clean. At this point, they're no longer viable to eat. He decides he'll take them over to the river near their house, kill them, and let the bottom feeders in the river do the rest. He throws the first one in the river when he realizes that this dead hen is floating. He panics and jumps in the river to get it. People swim in this river. He comes back to the house deciding the best bet is to drive up to the mountains, drop them all off, and let nature take its course. A day later, his mom receives a call from their neighbor. The call goes something like this. Neighbor: "Hey, Mom, you have Cornish game hens, right?" Mom, nervously: "Yes?" Neighbor: "I've got a favor to ask of you. I was in the mountains hunting yesterday, and some butthole left 6 Cornish game hens on the side of the road to die. I couldn't leave them. Would you be able to take them?" Mom: "Oh, that's horrible. Sure, we can take them." The husband ultimately had to kill them and dispose of them. LOL, that is how we ended up with chickens one winter. Came out to shovel snow, 6 hens and 3 roosters were eating in our front yard. Guess they saw a farm and figured we'd adopted them instead of letting them starve. It's pretty bold to buy living birds that you're intending to kill and cook without having ever done it before and being kind of squeamish about it. I mean, props for wanting to do something nice, and I can understand being like, oh my god, I can't do this, but man, that's a lot of investment and hassle for something that turned out like that.
Story 3. I offered to let a good friend I hadn't seen in 2 years stay at my house for a week while he was battling a tough home situation and drug addiction in another city. I thought it would be a good idea for him to come out and stay with me for a bit, especially since he was trying to kick his addiction back home, but his parents were enablers, and also that I missed him because he was my best friend. Instead, he decided to treat the week at my house as a drug retreat and spent the whole time getting high, trashing my house, and reconnecting with the wrong people. He used to live in my city, but his parents kept moving all of them around, so there were people he knew here. It is also important to note I'm not much of a drug person and was consistently encouraging him to kick his addiction. We've been best friends since we were maybe 7. Keep in mind, this happened when we were both 18. After he left, I cut all ties with him temporarily. I've slowly reconnected with him recently, and he is still trying to kick his habit, but that week with him living with me was heck on earth and very nearly killed my best friendship I had. It basically did kill it for a few months. Guys, please don't experiment with drugs, especially if you know you're likely to get hooked. If not for yourself, don't try them for the sake of the people that care for you. If you do get addicted, you won't be the only person to suffer the consequences. The people that love you will also have to go through a battle. People do love you. Don't throw that love away for a short thrill and a long road to recovery. Story 4. On the subway, an older gentleman with a cane gets on, drops his backpack on a seat, then crosses to the other side of the car for some reason. Door closed, he turns back, the train starts moving, he starts falling towards me. I try to catch him as best I can, with the speed of his movement plus the train's momentum plus his weight, all combined with the weird angle. I caught him as I tear the frick out of the muscles in my forearm. He still ended up on the floor, but he didn't hit his head since I caught his shoulders. He swings his cane up and shatters the window to the door, though thankfully it has a protective film so it doesn't go anywhere. He starts swearing, so I get up cradling my arm that could well be broken for all I knew at that moment and walk away. I didn't need another injury if he was peed. I didn't catch him well enough. Good deeds don't go unpunished. I also couldn't ice it for 30 to 40 minutes because the person with the keys to where I was working that day ended up sleeping in late. It took months before I could carry anything with that arm.
I mean, you tried to do the right thing, and I think that's admirable, and unfortunately it ended pretty poorly, but I imagine that if you were presented with that whole opportunity again, you'd probably do the same thing because you don't know how much more hurt the old man could have got. So good on you for, sacrificing yourself a little bit for someone else.
Story 5. Went to an auto parts store to get something. I don't remember what. Saw a woman outside staring under the hood of her car with an I have no idea what I'm looking at sort of vibe. It was super hot that day, and she had a bunch of kids with her. I asked the guy inside if he knew what was going on, and he said she needed a new battery but couldn't afford their cheapest one. I'm not wealthy, but I've always believed in doing what you can to help others, and I'd already paid my bills and had enough to swing a new battery for her. So I told him to grab whatever battery she needed. I walked out with the battery and said to the woman, I heard you needed a new battery, and I know you didn't ask anyone to help, but I hope it's okay that I took care of getting one for you. Or something to that tune. She screamed really loud, "Get the frick out of my face. White people are always trying to help somebody." So I got the frick out of her face and returned the battery. On the way back to my car, I looked at one of the kids and they mouthed, "I'm sorry, thanks for trying." I nodded and drove away. White people are always trying to help somebody. That's a first for me in terms of either insults or compliments. Story 6. I was throwing my wife of 6 years a surprise birthday party and went through her phone to get contact info for her friends. Found recent text messages to an ex-boyfriend saying how much she missed him and wanted to be back with him. Story 7. I was up for a promotion at work. One of my coworkers, a single 23-year-old mom of 2 kids, also wanted it. I was far more qualified and knew it was going to be offered to me, a gay man with no kids, so I had a meeting with management and told them I stepped down so she could have the money and experience for her kids. 3 months later, she got with this guy and got obsessive. Texted all day, always on the phone arguing with him if he so much as looked at another girl, then started calling out sick all the time and not doing any work at all. Finally, she got fired. Last frickin' time I ever did anything like that again. Story 8. One of my best friends was having a really bad day at work on his first day on the job and started texting me about it while he was on break. I Snapchatted his girlfriend, who was a good friend at the time, and told her about it while also saying, if anyone would know how to cheer him up, it's you. She said she'd do it and make a surprise date plan to make his day better. A few hours after he got back from work later, I asked her how it went, and she proceeded to rip me a new one for an hour about how if her boyfriend is having a bad day, she doesn't need me telling her and she could figure it out herself. That's just her being a butt. Giving someone a heads up / engaging someone's loved one to help is a really nice thing to do.
Okay, that's just a little bit too possessive of someone that you're dating. Like, girlfriend, you can't be the boyfriend's everything and know every little facet of his life. If a friend is sharing something with you, don't be like, how dare you? How dare you step into my realm? Like, no matter, I mean, and this goes for boyfriends with girlfriends, with boyfriends, with whatever. Like, don't be that possessive. Like, friends might be able to see stuff that you don't. That's weird.
Teachers, what's the worst thing you've heard a colleague say about a student?
Story 1. My junior year, a teacher had a miscarriage. When she came back, she was a bit mad at the class for a bunch of a-holes acting like D-bags and yelled quite a bit. A student got up and said something to the effect of, "Guess it's a good thing you had a miscarriage." She broke down and cried. One of the other teachers came and got her. For about 15 to 20 minutes, there was total silence. Then the vice principal came in with a totally red face. Kid tried to say she deserved it and fought back when he tried to grab him. Vice principal punched him in the face hard. Kid stopped fighting. Total silence for the rest of the hour. Vice principal never got in trouble. Parents actually approved of their kid being suspended. I'm not going to say that a vice principal hitting a student is ever okay, but I can understand that kind of rage coming from that, because what that student said was also absolutely wildly unacceptable, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the kind of thing that, like, that's a reputation-ruining, awful thing to say. I know the teacher's mad and lashing out, and maybe the teacher's not a great person, but wowzers, you don't say something like that, but also you don't punch a kid in the face. I mean, woof. Story 2. I taught in Japan for a bit. I was kind of lucky because I got to start in the middle of the year as a result of my mid-year application for the job. Usually school starts in April, but I applied in July, started in August. The reason I got to start in the middle of the year was the guy teaching at that school before me was fired for harassing a student. This was at a middle school. That guy was in his late 20s and he was hitting on a 15-year-old girl. She was wearing a Simon at a festival and he asked her if she was wearing anything underneath it. He had a slight history of creepiness towards the girls, so this was the last straw. So now I'm working there and getting along great with the staff because I'm not paid. One day I'm getting a ride somewhere with the vice principal and we pass some high school kids on their bikes. He leans over in the car and judges my arm and gestured to some of the high school girls. He said, "Hey, high school girls." It was uncomfortable for the rest of the ride. I think he was just testing me to make sure I wasn't like the previous guy, but I'm not entirely sure. I frickin' hate creepy teachers who hit on high school girls. And there's no argument that makes it okay to be. Oh, but their bodies are developing and that most of them look like adults, but they're not. You can tell by the way that they act and talk. I mean, there's no offense to you teenagers. You're allowed to be teenagers and grow up and act the way you act. We all do that. But it's even when I was in my younger 20s, I could tell the difference between myself and the other younger 20-somethings and teenagers. It's so apparent. And so it's just gross. I don't take any of the excuses. Just weird. And I'm sorry if that's the vice principal's way of testing you. It is just creepy.
Story 3. When I was in 6th grade, there was this kid. I'll call him Danny. Danny was an idiot of the highest caliber. The kid just sat there with a blank look on his face all day, every day. We're going over the human body and digestion one day, and teacher decides to throw Danny an easy question out to boost him up a bit. She asks him how we get liquid into our bodies. Danny sits there with a blank look and says, "I don't know." She prompts him again by asking how he gets liquid into his body when he's thirsty. Danny replies, "I don't know." She is amazingly frustrated at this point and goes as far to ask, "Danny, how do you get water into your body when you're thirsty?" And he replies, "I don't know, through your skin maybe?" She freaks out and loses her crap. He's sitting there looking dated as always, and Mrs. Teacher charges to the back of the room and grabs his arm. She pulls him out of his seat and drags him to the front of the classroom where there was a sink. The water gets turned on and she shoves his arm into the stream and keeps yelling at him, "Through the skin? Through the skin? How are you feeling now? Are you getting full? Are you getting enough water?" I'm nearly 40 now, and I will remember that scene for the rest of my life with mixed amounts of horror and amusement.
Okay, I know we all want to have a little laugh about it, and I did laugh through the skin. It is funny, but when you do stop and think about it, though, like, I don't know, maybe Danny had kind of a learning disability or something, or just wasn't paying attention. I don't think he deserved to be drug in front of the class and embarrassed like that. It's a bit too far, and yeah, I know, I'm not going to be able to control. My initial reaction is, it's funny to read, but, there's plenty of funny stuff in movies that you shouldn't actually do in real life. We get that, right?
Story 4. If you're Asian, you will be told to stop studying Chinese characters if you're not paying attention. If you're Latino, he will ask questions about which community college you're going to. If you look European, like I do, he assumes you're an immigrant. I've been told multiple times to make sure you write your test in English, and when calling him out on that, be told something along the lines of, "In Poland, your behavior would not be acceptable at all while keeping a stupid grin on his face. I wonder how he still has a job." Story 5. My gran died literally the day before my final university exam, so I applied for special consideration immediately. One of my university staff members, who apparently had some sort of chip on her shoulder, was deliberately delaying my application by continually displacing my paperwork. After 2 months of jumping through this woman's hoops, all other applications were approved or declined within 1 to 2 weeks. I emailed directly to her boss to complain about her. Not long after that, I received an email from the woman who called me, and I quote, "a queue-jumping, daddy-loving troll." Half an hour later, I received 2 more emails, one from her and one from her boss, apologizing profusely. The boss then informed me that my special consideration was approved and that the woman had been fired. Story 6. I used to have 2 math teachers, older men, and they would send various girls to and from each other's classes with important messages to give to the other teacher. Years later, I talked to one of the girls, and it turns out they were sending hot girls dressed in something like a short skirt or revealing outfit for the other to check out, and the notes always had something gross and launched on it.
Ooh, sounds like maybe the principal or something should send a little note to each of those teachers, have some students deliver some friggin' pink slips so they lose their jobs and are on a list. Cripes.
Story 7. I had a substitute teacher sub for me one day, and in her substitute teacher report for my 8th grade class, she wrote, Jenny, name changed, was lifting up her shirt to show the boys her navel ring. I predict she will be pregnant by next year. Story 8. I went to the high school my mom taught at. Teachers were at my house all the time. They never held anything back, and so it is nearly impossible to hold it to a single thing that one of them said. But here are a few that stand out. I effing hate future valedictorian, but I'm not going to be the one who gives him an A- or his count mom will throw a fit. It's not worth the hassle. That effing kid has no sense of reality. Once his daddy's money stops flowing, he's going to be in prison. I can't wait to visit him there. Regarding 2 attractive twin brothers a year behind me. Which one is hotter? I'd F them both at the same time. I would kill that little bee if I could get away with it.
Okay, I know I've said in the past that, teachers need to be able to kind of vent to each other a little bit, like everyone does, you talk about stuff when people aren't there. A line is being crossed here. Some of it's kind of upsetting to hear teachers saying, and some of it's incredibly upsetting to hear teachers saying. So, what a fun story.
Story 9. A student in 5th grade saw a psychologist to test him for learning difficulties. This was an average student of accepting, educated parents in a private school. The psychologist told the kid's parents that he would never go to college. What the F? How can you limit a 10-year-old's future like that? The parents were upset, but luckily ignored her. His current high school is a much better fit for him, and he's not the top of the class. There's no reason he shouldn't be able to pursue higher education if that's what he wants. Story 10. I heard that some teacher at my school once literally told a student that he was a nasty, filthy little piece of crap, and that he should go back to the toilet, which he was torn out of. That teacher was really angry, and the kid he insulted really was a butt. He got an official warning, but got away scratched. The kid was one that could handle things like it, so he took it lightly. It sure left an impression, though. Story 11. Heard a lot of creepy comments about female students. Some were subtle and some less subtle, but the worst one was actually from a female teacher talking about a male student. Paraphrasing, when he wears those tight jeans, I just want to give him a spank, you know? She used to buy him stuff all the time and pay him a lot of attention. People thought it was strange, but it was okay because she was also his aunt.
No, it isn't. It's worse. I mean, I assume that's what you're getting at. I feel like you gotta put that last comment in, like, double italics or something to just, because, no! Oh my god, it's his aunt also, and his aunt should be fired and maybe, I don't know, kept away from children all the time.
Parents with identical twins, what experiments are you secretly running?
Story 1. Identical twin here. Up until 2 years ago, my brother and I were part of our parents' not-so-secret experiment. The plan was to not tell either of us who was the older twin, in this case by 45 minutes, until our 21st birthday. The idea being that growing up, one guy didn't think he was the older brother, so should call the shots all the time, and that by the time we reached 21, we would be mature enough to not care about it. The experiment completely backfired. They just managed to build it up for years, and I still bring it up all the time that I won out and was officially crowned twin number 1. Yeah, no, that I could have probably told them that right off the bat. It's like, no, you're keeping a mystery for 21 years? A mystery that you're just dangling over their heads? Oh no, you've just basically made like 2 deranged conspiracy theorists who are just like, why are they keeping this from us? Who's the oldest? I must know! Story 2. Here's my story. I'm an identical twin, and my brother is 15 minutes older than me. When we were 20, our mom told us that we were part of an experiment where we were told the wrong birth order. At first, neither of us believed her, but she showed us a document detailing the experiment. I laughed at it, but I didn't really care. Being the younger twin does not really matter to me. My brother, on the other hand, got irate. During our lives, he had been the one to take the lead on things. This experiment completely undermined his role in our relationship. Turns out there was no experiment. Our mom just wanted to see how we would react. My brother started seriously questioning some of his attitudes. I'm the older twin by about 15 minutes. The only thing that gets me is being able to say stupid jokes. Some of my favorites include, "Respect your elders," said with a crap-eating grin. "When I was your age," proceed to tell him what I was doing 20 minutes ago. "You'll understand when you get older." Once again, crap-eating grin accompanying this statement. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would want to know or care who was older if I had an identical twin. But, I don't have an identical twin. Definitely not anywhere out there. You wouldn't be able to find him. These days, he certainly wouldn't look the same after all the decomposition. But I don't have a twin.
Story 3. Someone with an identical twin brother. I can confirm that my parents were very curious to see if we would develop similar personalities and interests, and for the most part, we did. We're both somewhat introverted, my brother more than me, but have basically the same interests and are essentially as smart as each other, although in slightly different areas. I think that we're more introverted partially because we actually got along and didn't have to find friends as much because we always had one who wasn't going anywhere. Also, my name starts with an A and his with a Z, and you wouldn't believe how many people ask if that was intentional. It wasn't, they just liked the name. Also, the constant dong size question, which we've never tested and never will, cause that's weird, guys. You wouldn't ask your non-identical brother how big his dong was, would you? Twin brother here, measured dongs when little. Story 4. Our twins are mirror images, which make them interesting to watch as they grow up. One is right-handed, the other is left. They naturally gravitate to the same places in the car, at the table, when they walk, etc. One is far-sighted in the right and nearsighted in the left, and the other is the opposite. They have different personalities and swear the other one is the ugly one, even though most people can't tell them apart for a while. I constantly call their names wrong, but they are used to it and answer, unless it's for a core. Then I get the sigh. Every so often, I'll pinch one to see if the other will scream. Story 5. We generally dressed our boys with one in blue and the other in red. This was done mainly so there was a differentiation at a glance, and so photos would be somewhat easier to tell apart 10 years in the future. Now I'm trying to figure out if their individual personality quirks are related to that early decision, easygoing versus stressed out, etc. Probably not, but I'm discovering parents worry about the stupidest stuff.
I really like the idea of color-coding twins. Because if I was a parent of twins, I'd be like, I'm gonna mix them up so much. Nope, you know what? This twin's wearing this color, this twin's wearing that. Except maybe they get older and they get jealous of the other brother's color. And like they form a hierarchy where they're just like, you notice how mom and dad wear blue a lot more and I have the blue shirt. They don't wear red very much. Do they, Daniel? And Daniel's just like, why you always do this to me? I'm just as good. I don't have a twin brother.
Story 6. Son A gets Gatorade. Son B gets Powerade. Whoever dominates the other in academics and athletics by age 11 will go on to become the favorite. Story 7. I'm a woman who has a twin brother, so while not what of was going for my parents, did various gender studies, so to speak. Not really deliberately, just stuff like if your boy or girl twins share a room and that room is stocked with dolls and guns, who's going to go for what? And sir, neither of us went for the dolls, but bro went for the toy weapons and I just obsessed over the logos. The funniest one my mom remembers though was getting passports for both of us and sending in the pictures for both of us with the backs labeled. My brother was in a yellow onesie and I was in a turquoise blue one because it matched my eyes or some such. The passport office called to confirm with her that she labeled the pictures correctly because surely the girl was the one dressed in yellow because blue is a boy color. Anyway, perhaps not what you wanted, OP, but you looked like you were lacking answers, so thought I'd provide one. The youngest girl with 4 older brothers, my mom didn't bother buying me any girl toys until she found me playing house with a couple of cars. Story 8. I have a twin brother. Our parents decided to name us the closest as possible. Our names are a letter different and pronounced the same in certain cultures. Needless to say, the experiment wasn't so secret. In high school, I wasn't in the yearbook for 3 years because I was thought to be a duplicate. We shared the same classes some years, which allowed for some breakups when it came to grading. He would have never passed Algebra 2 without my grades. We now work at the same place but different departments. I get emails from his coworkers as he does mine. So thanks, Mom and Dad, you have perfected the troll.
Okay, first off, I have to say, your parents gave you really similar names, and now you've, done a lot of the same stuff in life, and you're working at the same place and everything. I feel like that in and of itself is now a reason to not do that to twins, because it's too much. I don't like when twins do too many things the same. It gets kind of weird. It doesn't seem like it should be like that, and I'm weirded out. But also, parents, your kids' names isn't an opportunity for you to have a quirky joke or do something like, ooh, what fun and wacky. Having 2 super similar names, that's obnoxious for those poor kids. Don't do that to them. I'm sure they're great, but geez.
Story 9. We refuse to tell anyone who was born first because we don't want anyone, including them, to make any assumptions about them based on their age. Like, this one is older, so she's the leader, or that one is younger, so she's more laid back, etc. Not even their grandparents know. Oh, and they're mirror-identical twins, which is just an experiment in and of itself. Their clicks spin in opposite directions. One favors her left hand. She writes with her right hand, but will paint and draw with her left hand. Fun times. Story 10. I don't dress my twins, 22-month-old identical boys, alike, and their personalities are as different as they could be. Twin A is a middle bunny, but twin B, aka L. Jeff, is not one to brick with. Last night he knocked over a block towel that my hubby was building with twin A, threw his hands up and said, "What now?" It's funny and a little scary at the same time. Story 11. I've always wanted to switch families for a day just to see how long it would take for them to notice, but Voodoo, my brother's B, probably scared you would brick his wife. Story 12. Not a twin, but my brother and I look eerily similar, except for his facial hair, as I'm a lady without facial hair. But we have the same coloring, same big curly hair, same face, same kind of shape, vocal tones, laugh, etc. Every time I visit, his baby son gets very confused and looks back and forth to both of us trying to figure out why he has 2 ladies. It's very cute. My dad's brother looks a lot like him. My nephew was about 2 when my uncle came to visit the first time. My dad has stepped out, so when my nephew arrived, it was just my uncle there. Well, my nephew assumed it was his grandpa and climbed up in his lap. He was as happy as could be until my dad walked in. He was creeped out, to say the least. Story 13. Mine are adults now, and one of them even has her own twins, but they are fraternal. Anyway, just last year, our identical twins told us that one of the things we did as parents actually worked. We tried not to raise them as twins. We said they were sisters who had the same birthday. We didn't let other family members call them twins. We insisted on individual names. We did not dress them alike. They were in different classrooms whenever the school had 2 classes for the same grade. So last year they told us that they did not realize they were twins until sometime around 3rd grade. They both remember sitting in their bunk beds in 2nd grade and talking about how it would be fun to have a twin. I'll call that a parenting success.
Okay, that's kind of interesting, raising twins, but telling them for a while that they're just, sisters or brothers or whatever. It's like, no, you're not twins. You're just, born around the same age. But yeah, whatever, no big deal. But yeah, eventually that's all going to fall apart and they're going to realize. And I feel like as kids, they might have some questions like, why? And maybe the parent's answer is, I don't know, twins creep me out. That's a terrible answer.
Story 14. Mom had an identical twin who is my aunt, obviously. My aunt is taller, maybe 5'6". My mom's about 2 inches shorter. My mom told me this experience that they had the same dream about a dark, tall figure standing over them in their bedroom when they were 9. It didn't say anything, just stood there in the same spot in both of their dreams. They both woke up at the same time and just stared at the spot all night. Definitely kind of scary, but that's the only thing like that has happened to them. Pretty sure there was just a dude in their room. Story 15. Finding ways to see if there was some weird connection between them. I have identical 3-year-old girls. The girls had a couple small stuffed bunnies from Easter they were obsessed with during this time. One of them was in the hospital a while back for a respiratory illness. One night, she was saying her sister wanted her bunny, very adamant. Her sister was staying with my mom an hour away, and out of sheer curiosity, I called and asked my mom if that twin was looking for her stuffed bunny at that time. She was. Now, it is likely pure coincidence since they both loved the bundles at that time, but I like looking for any weird connection between them that just makes me go, the F? How do you know that? Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.